this as well for you guys. But I'm pretty sure this talk or this lecture already exists somewhere in the chat. So, all right. So let's talk about sculpting the facial features for character sculpting. Last class we did talk about the skull in general, taking it and sculpting it. So when we talk about the facial features, it's important to think about the facial anatomy and the digital sculpting landmarks and proportions that you're going to need to notice. And the best way when it comes to sculpting facial features is to take them, I always feel like, individually at first and then as a whole later. Because when you understand the elements that go into them, then you can then try to depict it in the best way possible. So last class we definitely talked about the parietal bone, the temporal bone, the zygomatic bone or zygomatic arch, the maxilla, the mandible, the brain case, and then the facial bones. So when you're looking at the landmarks, we definitely talked about the widest point of the skull, the parietal eminence. We talked about the top of the nasal aperture and the eye line, then the upper teeth, and then the bottom of the chin, and then compare those to the top of the cranium. So when it comes to the proportion of the face, we do kind of separate it into these thirds. And then if you're on ZBrush, you can turn on X and it'll do the symmetry for you. So you only have to really do one side. All right, I would implore you to draw it out in general, like so that you know how to do it on both sides. But the beauty of doing digital sculpts is if you do a lot of it well on one side, it'll mirror it to the other. So we've talked about the key bony landmarks, the brow ridge, the cheekbones, and the jawline. Let's go on to some of these bony landmarks. So there's something called the gonial angle. And depending on the, like I said last class, the age, the gender, and ethnicity, they can be different. But there's a general rule, a general consensus for a lot of them, depending on male or female. So we try to break these down into the simplest forms, and then we try to look for characteristics in individuals that make those characters different. All right? So when you're looking at this gonial angle for a newborn, you can see how it's about 135 to about 150 degrees. For a more feminine, right, you want it to be about 120 to about 140 degree angle. When it comes to masculine, more the what do they call it? The Chad jawline, right? It's about 100 to 120 degree angle. And then the older you get, right, you're going to start experiencing bone loss, right? And you might even experience teeth loss as well. So that gonial angle is going to go to about from about 100 to 120 to 125 to about 145 again. So it starts to round back out. A lot of chewing over the years, right? Which is why when I saw some of the sculpt, I was like, oh, that's, it looks a little more elderly than masculine. A different type of skull, but still a skull nonetheless. All right. So there's a few differences between the male and the female skull, right? You can see that for male skulls, the rounding out of the eye is a little more squared. And for females, it's a little rounder. For men, that arch right? That brow line is a little more pronounced than a female's, right? And the pelvic, that pelvic wall is a little wider for men, and the pelvic arch right here is a little pointier for women. For men, when you're looking at their brow, you can see how much more pronounced that brow is for men than women. It's a little smoother, right? And this is on general. This isn't, for every single one. There are exceptions to the rule, right? And for that flat of the skull, for men, it's a little flatter, and for women, it's generally a little more round. So, when you think about the morphological traits of the skull of major groups of regional ancestry, this is when I talk about how race can play into the features, right? When you think about the European, it's a little more square. When you think about their nasal cavity, it's a little more pointy. For the African, it's a little rounder, right? It's a little wider, it's a little rounder. And then theirs kind of tends to go down a little bit more. For East Asian, it's a little rounder, and it has a bit of a wider gate at the bottom. And then there's the indigenous Australians, which has more of a square nasal structure, and then their eyes are a little more squared off and a little kind of tilted to the bottom a little bit. So you have these different shapes. So whenever you're looking at characters, you want to kind of notice, okay, so if I'm dealing with male or female, right, and then what race am I doing? And there's a lot of, like I said, exceptions to the rule. This is a general rule that we've kind of seen across multiple people, and we try to generalize that. And that's the easiest way for us to do a lot of sculpting really quickly. What you realize is what we're doing is we're trying to amalgamate based on all of the information that we are getting, right? Our eyes get a lot of information just based on what we see, the way the shapes are, the distance between the eyes, the distance from the nose to the bottom of the lip or the top of the lip, right? The arch of the forehead. So our brain is trying to assess these things. Our brain is trying to do its best to translate that information into something that it can use, right? Does it say, oh, danger, safe, you should run, you should stay, right? These are the kind of things that the information that you see from different people, different animals, different environments, right? You see a certain type of shadow, right? You go, okay, that shadow is larger than me. That's a wildebeest. That's an elephant, right? I should probably not be here. That's a bear, right? Oh, that's the shadow of a deer, right? An antelope. Okay, I know that is not only safe, but I should probably hunt that, right? Things like that help us as humans, and we've evolved over time to be better discerners of these things. And in some cases, we're worse at it, right? In general. So when we talk about the eye, right, we're going to start from the top and then go down. We're going to go to the eye. So the areas of the eye. Whenever I draw the eye, in general, so like I usually take a lot of these by how I would draw it first, and then I go to how I would sculpt it. All right. So it's usually a sphere that I draw, and then whenever I put the eyelid over it, I imagine that the eyelid is wrapping around this sphere, right? This sphere, and then there's like a little ball on top of the eye as well. All right. So the eyeball is not a simple sphere, but can be viewed as a result of fusing of two spheres, a small curved with a large, not so strongly curved sphere, right? And the small piece occupying about 1/6 of the whole and has a radius about 8 meters, about 0.3 inches. It is transparent and is called the cornea. The large is called the scleral segment. Is opaque and has a radius of about 12 millimeters, about 0.5 inches. The ring where the two areas join is called the limbus. All right? So that's how I usually take it. There's two spheres. There's one big sphere here, and there's like a littler sphere that's protruding out. Once you take it like that, and I always try to teach people to draw through the shapes. Pretend like you can see through to what's going on the inside, and you want to draw through that, because it's going to, instead of trying to pretend like it's just you're drawing a curve, which can be wrong, you fully draw this sphere, right? And then you draw this other sphere, and then you can flatten it out in the middle. All right? So what you want to remember is that the pupil is the black part of the eye right in the middle. The iris is the colored part of the eye, right? This is the part that can be blue, dark brown, light brown, green, red if you're Sith. You know, these are the part. This is the limbus right here, and there's a line, right? This is the sclera, sometimes white, with veins that you can see that are on top of it. All right, so the sclera is the white part of the eye that surrounds the iris. The plica semilunaris, that word is crazy. It is the crescent-shaped fold located in the medial corner of the eye. All right. I always call it like the tear part, like it looks like a tear duct or something, but it's like this part of the eye. It's like a little fleshy part of the eye. So it's called the conjunctiva. Right? You can see that this looks like pink meat, whatever this is, but this part, a lot of artists usually miss these little parts of the eye, and it just helps our eye out in general. So it's made of skin covering the sebaceous and the sweat glands. So there are sweat glands that this is covering that helps our eye in general. It helps lubricate our eye in general. So if you look at the eye from the side, you can see how that ball is right on top of it. You can see some of the veins on top, and then it's a little transparent. So when you think about the eye, you want to remember that there's the orbital cavity structure, right? Like right around here, right? That cavity. For men it's a little more square. For women it's a little rounder, right? And then there's the eyelid anatomy, which is the upper, then the lower crease. Then you've got your tear ducts and the surrounding fatty tissue. And what you always want to remember is the eyelashes, right? They don't sit, a lot of people when they draw it or they sculpt it on the inside. But you have to remember there's a ridge right here. There's a ridge right here. It's almost like a lip that covers the eye, right? And so this is how you should think about it. This is when you think about how the flat of the eye is. So this area is flat, the iris, and then there is the pupil. All right? So you want to start by carving out the eye socket. Use a sphere for the eyeballs. Sculpt the eyelids around the eyeball. Adjust the depth and refine the shapes. All right? So we've got the scleral reflection, which is right here. So it's usually diffused due to its uneven surface of the sclera white of the eye. So it's usually a little it's a little the way it's reflecting light is going to be messed up because this surface has a lot of bumps on it, right? That could be due to its shape, the surface, the veins that live on the surface, the water, right? What's doing the reflection is the water, right? There's liquid or tears or whatever is covering our eye. Then whenever light bounces on it, based on the smoothness or the roughness of the surface, it's going to either reflect 100%, which is this white part, right? 100% reflection means this surface is white and it's bouncing that back to us, or it's getting absorbed and diffused because there's some sort of bump, which is why you see that difference in the reflection capabilities, right? If you imagine that these white spots are 100%, so I'll do 1, this is like a 0. So you're imagining that this part is absorbing the light, this part is reflecting the light. All right? Then we've got our corneal reflection. It's a very sharp reflection. The cornea behaves like a convex spherical mirror. All right? Right here. If you've ever seen anybody do like glaucoma surgery or something, they'll cut this open to clear out whatever gunk can be behind there. It's pretty gnarly to watch that kind of stuff, but yeah. Then there's the limbal reflection right here. This is where this part meets this part, right? So this appears on the boundary between where the white sclera and the dark iris tear fluid reflection. A thin strip of tear fluid called the upper and lower tear menisci, and also along the plica semilunaris. All right. So right here. If you look right here, you can see where that the tear or the liquid that's built up in there. And if you look at this eye, this is what I keep talking about. You can see where the eyelashes are kind of built up. They're not built in here, which is how a lot of people draw them. So you have to remember that there's this little ridge. There's a good amount of space, right? Some people's are thinner than others, but there's this good amount of space right between where the eye ends and then where the eyelashes start. So keep that in mind whenever you're sculpting. All right? So here are the parts of the head. Okay. So that's the fold that I was talking about. So the epicanic fold and the epicanthus is the eye cover fold extended downward and partially or fully covering the upper eyelid and inner corner of the eye. The highest frequency of occurrence of epicanthic folds is found in specific ethnicities: East Asians, South Asians, Central Asians, North Asians. In European populations, epicanthic folds occur at a considerably lower frequency. So there's this fold right here that happens whenever, I guess it's depending on your ethnicity, the amount of fold you're going to get. I've seen people who do surgeries to either give themselves one or remove theirs, which is pretty interesting to me. I don't know why you would care that much about your eye fold, but that's something people care about. All right, so with a higher degree of it, you get an eye fold that it's super pronounced. It makes it look like your eye has no separation. With a lower epicanthic eye fold, right? Or, well, the monolid is what they call it, right? The monolid, right? With a lower version, you get something that looks like that. And then if it's absent, right, it looks like that. The epicanthic folds may be visible in the development stages of young children of any race, especially before the nose bridge fully develops. Many fetuses lose their epicanthic fold after 3 to 6 months of gestation. All right, so the eye area is divided into about 6 different parts. And this is probably one of those slides, or this is probably one of those classes where we're going to divide these up. So like we might start with the eye, and we'll go and kind of study the eye, and then we'll move on from there. I think the next portion is probably like the nose or the ear or something. So we'll skip that one until next week, but I want to focus on one body part at a time so that you guys get that opportunity to look at it, study it, do it, and then we can move on to the next part. So this division is not anatomical, but rather based on form change. Therefore, it may not entirely be relevant to those in medical and physical anthropology literature. The division was based on the second level complex angular blockout. So when we're talking about the eye, right, we're talking about the upper lid right here, right? So this is the eyeball. Imagine this is your eyeball. You've got your upper lid, you've got your lower lid, you've got this is your temporal line. So like that, the side of your head is right here. So you have to imagine that with all of this going on here, you can always generally line this up to the corner of the eye. All right, so you've got your brow area, ear, and then you've got your tear bags here, and usually there's a nice bit of fatty deposit that happens right under here, right? There's usually what holds that together is like collagen, and the older you get, the more collagen you lose, and that's what keeps our skin and those fat kind of together. So when you see people with like saggy bags and they'll go and try to get like these things called collagen injections to replace the collagen that they're losing, that keeps that part of your eye kind of firm. All right, and then this purple area is your infraorbital kind of cheekbone area. So then you start to get this downward turn of these muscles here. All right. So now when we talk about the eye zone, right, you guys should have a pretty decent understanding of what it kind of looks like under there. There's that clear film. It kind of goes into a flat, but the way we depict it is a little different. All right, so here's how it attaches, right? You want to imagine that you have this sphere with a sphere on top, right? And this is the muscle that kind of holds it and connects it from the inside of that nasal to the inside of that the zygomatic kind of arch over there, right? So when you think about how that muscle works, right, how your eyelid works, there's a piece of muscle that's pulling your eyelids open. It's doing the work of pulling it open and pulling it closed. All right. So like I was saying before, you do have a fat deposit at the bottom here, right, and at the top. All right, so when we talk about the muscles for the eye, we have the levator palpebrae superiors, which is these muscles at the top, right here. This is the one right here that pulls your eyelid open. You've got your superior rectus right here as well. Then we've got your lateral rectus, this green one, right here, and they're all connected back here. So it's all held. It's crazy how our eye is being held together by all of these different pieces of muscle, right? To think about everything that goes into you just blinking, making tears, right? Like looking left, looking right, and it doesn't like your eye just doesn't fall out every time you do something. You know, you've got your medial rectus right here. Then you've got your inferior rectus right about here. Superior, inferior, lateral, medial, and then you've got your superior oblique right here. Man, it's crazy how all of these kind of work. And then you've got your inferior oblique right here, and then you've got your trochlea just right here. And then when you, on top of all of that muscle, right, all of the muscle work that's happening to keep our eye in its place, we then have this fatty structure that helps keep all of that stuff in place, right? So that when you poke your eye, you're not just poking muscle. You've got a layer of fat that helps support all of that. So when you're sculpting, right, these are the basic steps that you want to kind of sculpt in, right? Round it out. You've got your upper, lower, your eyeball, and then you just want to keep working it, dividing them into planes, right? Where your frontal meets the corner of the eye, then the eyelids, upper, lower, where they meet. Put your tear ducts in, your eyeball, so it's not that flat structure that we look at. So here's kind of what that would look like, right? And you can see that there is this ridge that happens between the eye. And this is where that red line at the top is where your eyelashes would be in that equation. All right? So same here, just another diagram to show you the pieces. And if I were you, I would go in and almost take these diagrams and then just map it out the same way you see it here. Get a sphere, start outlining all of it. Maybe put another little sphere right here for the tear duct and that little piece right there. And then for the fatty tissue, so you don't have a monolid, and then the lower parts as well. All right, so looking at how the eye closes and opens, depending on how much of the pupil is covered, right? So you're imagining this is the pupil, this is your upper eyelid, 1/4 covered, fully open, your eyes wide open like you just saw something scary. And then some people can have, this is a smiling, so some people can have kind of a lower lid that closes like that. So as you can see, this is what it looks like to have a monolid, a little less cover, and then almost non-existent. All right. Next class we will talk about the ear, but now we're going to jump into ZBrush.